The building in which the theatre calls its home was built in the 1920s and rests at 1133 Kensington Road Northwest. The Plaza has been owned and operated for the last 40 years by Mike Brar. At the time of its construction, it was a mechanic garage. Near the end of the Great Depression in 1935, the building followed a trend of the times and was turned into a neighborhood theater. Plaza Theatre as the independent art hub that we think of today began in 1995. The Plaza Theatre is vital to Calgary's arts community as it is one of the locations used in the Calgary Independent Film Festival and one of the only venues locally for independent live and film productions. The building is original, and in 2007, the owners partnered with Calgary Heritage Fund and American Express to raise money to restore the building. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, one of the most surprising casualties in the body count have been small but significant creative centers, the Plaza Theatre being one of them. As stated so astutely in Patricia K. Wood's article, The Historic Site as a Cultural Text, historic places reveal as much as written history about the cultural power to define, and may have an even greater ability to influence and construct public memory. Theatre has been operating for more than 75 years at the heart of Kensington. It has become a staple in the street's eccentric character. Walking in felt like stepping into a different time, with its long-term owner Mike Brar maintaining it in a vintage aesthetic, preserving a sense of romanticism of a lost nostalgic era in history. With only 2 small theatre rooms, it was almost inevitable that the theatre was going to end up in dire straits as the world struggles to overcome this pandemic. Though the theatre has not changed ownership yet, the future of it being a time capsule of the past has been put on uncertain grounds. The preservation of historical places and things is often a labor of passion that goes unappreciated or unmaintained in the hands uninterested in it. The Plaza Theatre is an iconic part of Kensington's identity as a unique pocket of Calgary's broader culture because of its age, but that also puts it at risk of being labeled as antiquated and not profitable enough for this new reality. In Michael Wilson's article on the politics of preservation and modernity, entitled Editing the Cultural Landscape, they write, "Newcomers to a landscape bring their own forms of dwellings, communities, and monuments, but they may also take deliberate steps to eradicate the signs of previous occupant, to edit the cultural landscape." Though specifically writing on landscape taphonomy in their article, this applies to alternative spaces that thrive on novel small establishments like the theatre as well. What parts of cultural history that are deemed worthy of preservation can also be at the whims of subjectivity and personal biases. Richard William Hill explores this idea thoroughly in his essay criticizing the biases in the curation of Canadian art entitled Graveyard and Gift Shop. Hill asserts, McMichael and his friend Mike Harris were convinced the only good artist was a dead artist. Is the McMichael Canadian Art Collection capable of ever being wrestled free of its flawed founding premise, regardless of who is at its helm? This poses the concern for those fond of the theatre if it were ultimately to change owners. Would its significance to the culture of Calgary's cinema culture as a whole even be understood by new management? Though its survival may be uncertain, the significance of the Plaza Theatre is as a different kind of movie-going experience will nevertheless be fondly remembered by those patrons who frequented it. Kensington dwellers can only hope now that it pulls through to the end of the pandemic so it can be continued to be appreciated for its old-timey charms.